Good evening and welcome to Clayton Piano Festival, our 10th season in 2020. We've been online for a while now, and I'd like to thank you all for your continued participation and attendance through these difficult times for everyone, and especially musicians. We're trying to keep concerts going now, and I just have so much thanks in my heart for everyone who's helped out and given generously of any resources that they have, particularly the town of Clayton, the Johnston County Arts Council, and of course this wonderful space that we're in here, Hopper Piano Company. It's a very special place, and one where if it didn't exist, probably we wouldn't be doing these concerts. So not only are we able to continue live stream concerts, but we're able to continue it with the finest instruments that Central North Carolina and the Raleigh area can provide. So I'm very grateful for that. Tonight we have with us a very dear friend of mine. His name is Yoni Levyatov. He's a classmate of mine and very special artist and musician. And so yesterday, once he got in from the airport, we sat down and just kind of talked about all the music that's on this program. So, and I filmed it, so because why not? And here's what he had to say about the first pieces. I guess first of all, I should say welcome to North Carolina too.
Thank you very much.
And you were actually a big inspiration to me when we were going to school together.
Is that so?
Yes, because I remember you were one of the students who had like this amazing sense of color on the piano, and not everyone has that. In fact, the idea of color on the piano is kind of elusive, right? Like, it's a subjective thing, I guess.
It certainly is a subjective thing, but you know when it's there.
Yeah.
If you have the sensitivity to it,
mm-hmm.
as a listener or as a performer.
Yeah.
And as far as the performer is concerned, you have to want it, of course, very much.
Yeah. So it requires both the performer to seek to produce those certain differences of sound, and also an audience that really seeks to hear those things too.
Yes, like in anything, you need both sides to be receptive.
Yeah.
But perhaps I could say that there is a spectrum on both ends. So however much one is giving, the other side is able to receive however much the other side can receive, and it's still it's a good thing.
Yeah, just like in any like conversation like we're having right now, right?
I mean, multiple levels.
Multiple levels, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and these pieces tonight, they require a certain amount of color in them, I think. The first piece, and it's Italian, so I'm going to screw up, of course, the pronunciation here, but nel cuore più non mi sento, it literally means my heart anymore. And so there's basically, these singers are lamenting like how terrible love is, and so it's kind of a sad song, right? But why do you think so many composers like set this song in different ways? Like, what is it about this tune?
Well, as far as I know, back then the variation form was very popular. Yeah. Everyone wanted to hear favorite tunes.
It's a form of improvisation, basically.
Right. Yeah. And this particular tune was a favorite. Why I couldn't say, nobody knows why certain tunes become favorites and others don't. And as far as opera tunes are concerned, I know that very often all kinds of variations and fantasies on tunes of opera would travel before the opera.
Yeah.
Because for an opera to travel, a lot needs to happen.
Right.
A tune can travel easily. And I know that in Italy, for example, often if an opera was staged in a major place, all kinds of tunes from that opera would travel throughout the country in forms of fantasies for instruments.
Right.
And then eventually people would hear the opera.
Yeah, basically like the radio before there was radio, right? Like that's
Right,
how
exactly.
people
You could say
heard
that,
and
yes.
consumed music.
And for a composer to write a piece on a popular tune was very likely a good device, a good career device to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And for a composer such as Beethoven, I shouldn't say such as Beethoven because there's no one like him. In his variations, of which he has many sets of different degrees of seriousness and complexity, his really shows. And that's one of the reasons I like his variations a lot, because they really give us a clue as to his pianistic style.
Yeah.
Certainly more than the sonatas or more than any other piece with a form that's more constrained.
Yeah.
Even though he reinvented these forms many times, but in the variations, you really see the person improvising very freely. And that's a major thing for me to be attracted to.
It's a key aspect of his overall musical aura. I mean, that's how he became famous in Vienna in the beginning, was
As an improviser.
Improviser in
Yes,
piano.
absolutely.
Supposedly, he would leave audiences in tears with his
Well, perhaps audiences back then were quicker to cry, and I say that with affection.
Yeah. Are we going to cry tonight?
I hope that I'm not going to cry. As for others, that's in their hands.
All right. Well, let's hear it. Schumann, he's always trying to like hide things in his music, like secret meanings. Like in the Carnival, he goes as far as to like have musical letters that he translates into motives that then mean certain people or characters or situations throughout the work. But these are less specific. This is just like Novelette. The idea is just like conveying some fleeting idea. Do you think he's trying to tell any kind of story in these works, or should we just not try to imagine that?
To me, any kind of message that may exist in Schumann's music is first and foremost purely musical and abstract. And as far as I know, most of his titles that may convey or mean something extra musical were often invented after the music was there. And he felt compelled for one reason or another to also give them titles. That, I believe, is the case in Carnival and most other pieces of the sort. And generally despite all the romantic idea of program music, the mystery and the whole essence of Schumann, I think, is the abstract musical sense. And that's what makes his music so highly original. And I would say he is the most original of the romantic composers of his time. And because of that pure originality, his music is sometimes more difficult to understand than that of Chopin. As original as Chopin may be, I think Schumann really is pure originality all the time, 100% or 200. And that inevitably meant that as he progressed, his music became less and less clear.
Yeah.
Not to say good or bad. The two novelettes that I am playing, one of them is from a very late opus number, but it's relatively not so wild for a late opus. And the novelette from opus 21 is really full of all kinds of wild elements that I would have difficulty finding in anyone else's music of the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's almost like some of the elements almost are in conflict with each other.
Yes, and they often come in counterpoint, and that is a great task for a performer.
Yeah.
To be multiple people at once and still retain a sense of cohesive music making.
Yeah. So now, two novelettes by Robert Schumann. Wow, pretty fantastic. It's going very well so far, Yoni. Really love that piece. So now, one of the things that we've been doing is just kind of presenting different businesses and organizations throughout the Clayton area and Johnston County, and in an attempt to kind of encourage people during these difficult times. And so one of the most important arts organizations in the Clayton area and in the central North Carolina region for many students throughout the area is the Clayton Youth Theater. The mission of the Clayton Youth Theater is to educate youth through theater arts, to showcase the talents of students to perform high-quality productions at a regional level, and to cultivate an appreciation for the arts in the community. And so throughout the last, 20 years, I've seen the Clayton community grow so much in the realm of the arts, and Clayton Youth Theater has been a big part of that. I had the pleasure to sit down with director and founder Nikki Dyke last year, and so here's a little bit of our interview.
Theater teaches so many things. It teaches leadership skills, it teaches commitment, it teaches teamwork, it builds confidence and self-esteem. And so those are the things that we are really doing and what students are really walking away with. My name is Nikki Dyke, and I'm the director of Carolina Youth Theater here in Clayton, North Carolina. My passion is sharing theater with young people. CYT came about because I was teaching in the public schools, and I saw firsthand that theater programs were not an important part of many of our public school systems. Basically, my husband and I decided that we were going to try to get something going in the community, that regardless where a student went to school, regardless of whether there was a program in their school that they could participate in, that there would be something in the community that they could get involved in. We got started in 2007, and since that time, we have been here in Clayton, bringing a couple shows a year to the families here and giving students performance opportunities. I have students that are coming to this program that want to be here. This is not for a grade, it's not for school. They're choosing to audition and participate, and so because of that, I get great students that really show their passion, and it really is a joy. It's awesome to see something go from an idea to a sketch in a notebook, to auditions, to live people on stage, to that final performance, and I feel very honored to be a part of that whole process. Students can participate beginning in the 7th grade, and they can be with us through their senior year of high school. And I've had several students that have been with us that entire time, and that's really special for me to see that commitment in those students. But it also is really rewarding because you see the growth. And I love that family aspect of CYT, where students continue to come back because they enjoy the program, because they're learning, they're growing, they're getting something out of it. And so that's really a fantastic part of the job. Our program is growing, and where do we see it going from here? Really, our focus is going to be on education. We are really focusing on building out a theater arts education curriculum so that students can do classes throughout the year, take workshops, and really further develop their skills. Our tagline this summer was #NoPlaceLikeCYT because of our Wizard of Oz show. But I do feel like that encompasses what we're about. It is a special place. We're family-oriented, students return, they want to be here. We're unique in that we are catering solely to students, and so I do feel like there really is no place like CYT.
So the next two works are by Russian composer Alexander Borodin, and he was one of the, what's called the Mighty Five or the Russian Handful, or there's a number of titles for it, but basically they're all like amateur musicians who were seeking to discover like intrinsically Russian sound in their music. And but they were far from what we would consider amateur musicians these days, like real highly educated and musicians of the highest order. Borodin was actually a chemist and is actually in some ways known for his work in organic chemistry more than music. But do you think that maybe the fact that he wasn't a musician by profession, maybe that gave him more freedom as a musician to explore different ideas?
That's a very good question. Freedom usually necessitates form and borders. You cannot be free from something unless you're in complete control and knowledge of this something. But Borodin had plenty of originality and his own talent for the very few works that he was able to write despite severe lack of time to outlive him and last to this day. And he was all the time busy with extra musical things, and that mostly explains his very small output. But of the rest of the Russian Five, I think his music is very often most original and unusual with its own flavor. As far as all of them being amateurs, as you know, comes from the word love.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, people who actually love what they do, unlike professionals. And they simply had professional careers aside from writing music. All of them except for Rimsky-Korsakov, who outlived everyone else and eventually was able to dedicate himself to music exclusively, at which point he started composing much more. So it was really a question of time for him as far as how much he could or could not write. But thankfully he completed enough for me to play tonight. And there are a lot of funny stories about him.
Oh yeah?
You know, he was very absent-minded. He one time addressed a letter to himself.
And sent it in the mail?
Yes, and it arrived, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, these are from the so-called Petite Suite, which was, I think, wasn't this the only thing that he wrote for piano? The only real substantial work that he wrote for piano?
It's the only work for the piano I'm familiar with.
Yeah. And supposedly...
And I would not call it very substantial.
Yeah, they're all small.
It's in the Petite Suite, and these are small pieces often played by children. But 100 years ago or so, they were much more popular. And I believe they were more in the concert repertoire than they are today.
Yeah. And
particularly the Scherzo, which is more of a fully fledged piece.
Yeah, definitely. So even adults can enjoy them.
Even adults can enjoy them.
And children at heart.
Well, that's necessary.
Necessary, yeah. Wow. Still going well, Yoni. So in the Clayton area, as I said before, I've seen the arts grow so much, and lately it's hard to keep track of everything that's been going on in the arts, and even virtually people have been getting really creative. So here to help us keep track of everything arts related is talk show host Yana Sletskaya of Let's Talk Art. And so you can follow her on YouTube channel. They're getting ready to premiere the first episode of Let's Talk Art.
Hi, I'm Yana Sletskaya. Welcome to Let's Talk Art.
It's like unbelievable. It's like a artist's paradise, really, and and I think, you know, we learn from each other.
Got to keep people's interest and passion in things alive.
Meeting artists, getting to know them, finding out their passions, making connections.
You know, research who your local artists are, like them on Facebook, hit them up on the Instagram, you know, and connect that way, since we can't be so close together.
It's a journey. It is a journey.
Yeah.
And it never stops. Really, art is so universal. It has no political affiliation. It is universal. It brings people together.
Now, let's talk art.
Wow, sounds like a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to watching that show. So the one thing that we forgot to talk about yesterday, Yoni and I, were his own compositions. And Yoni is kind of one of those all-around creative people that is not only a wonderful performer, but he's composing and creating his own music, and I would say a very unique style. And so these two miniatures kind of represent two different aspects of his style. The first one is Havanaise Oubliee, which is French. The Havanaise it's kind of like a dance from Havana, Cuba, and oublié, of course, means forgotten. So he's kind of trying to conjure up this nostalgia and dance form. And the second one, Lindy Hop, very strange title. And when he was writing this piece, he had in mind Charleston, the swing dance style, and wanted to kind of write a piece in this style. It turned out something like that. But during the course of his work on this particular piece, he asked our former dean, Dr. David Noon at Manhattan School of Music, what he should call something that's kind of in a new Charleston style, and Dr. Noon instantly said, Lindy Hop. So that's what it became, and so I'm really looking forward to these. I haven't ever heard them before, so I'm going to welcome back to the stage the composer himself, Yoni Levyatov. Chopin, our next composer, our last composer on the program, is often referred to as kind of the poet of the piano, and specifically of the piano because he primarily wrote for the piano. He hardly ever wrote for orchestra except for the 2 piano concertos, and it was a little bit of a disappointment maybe to his teacher Joseph Elsner, who maybe envisioned that he would someday write a big opera or some kind of work that would symbolize the plight of Poland in some way. But Chopin knew pretty much from the beginning, I think, that the piano was his primary expressive vehicle. And he became this iconic figure for Poland in so many ways, which they still celebrate to these days. He's even on a bottle of vodka. So do you think this, like, specifically piano interest affects his music in some way?
Well, I would say that the piano interest is the heart of his music, as opposed to an external influence. And his piano writing cannot be mistaken for anything else, even if not most of his major works were the very core of repertoire. And I don't think he felt any need in expressing himself with other instruments than the piano. It was plenty for him. So it was not a question of quantity of instruments or size of the musical body. It was a question of how precisely he can express himself using the one instrument that he is interested in. Yeah. And everyone agrees he did it in a way that's quite very supreme.
Yeah, like no one else. Like you said, it's hard to hear Chopin and mistake him for someone else.
Right. Even if we did not know a priori that this was Chopin.
Right. And so these pieces, the first one is from the Etudes. We usually think of an etude as, you know, something that, I don't know, was developed in the early part of the maybe 18th century as a device to help you develop your technique as a musician, you know, your finger dexterity and whatnot. But Chopin took these to a whole new level, made them into works that were suitable for the concert stage, and stamped his particular poetry on them. This one's often called the cello etude, but
yes,
that's again a title.
It is true that of all the composers of piano etudes, Chopin took the form to heights never achieved before, and as far as pure music is concerned, they of course stand very high, higher than any other etudes in the name I can think of, and they came out at a similar time to Liszt etudes, which are very popular, but as far as pure music is concerned, most people would agree that Chopin's etudes have the most music, and Liszt said that he would give away 10 of his pieces to be able to write a melody like in the third etude in E major. And coming from him, that might mean something.
Sure.
And it is true that there are a few slow etudes as well. And most of them contain parts, contain technical devices that are very prevalent in other pieces of Chopin. So as far as that, you can say that they serve as etudes for the rest of Chopin's oeuvre. But they, of course, are independently of the highest musical grade.
Yes. And then the last piece, one of my favorite Chopin pieces, the Ballade in F minor, opus 52. Again, Chopin, there are no titles to his works. He hated when people tried to ascribe external subjects to them.
And they did.
And they did. Revolutionary Etude, Raindrop Prelude, the list goes on and on. But with this work, I feel like he packs so much of his own soul into it, and it takes us through so many different, techniques, let's use that word. There's his own version of the nocturne in the very beginning, which has melody in the right hand, left hand accompaniment, and then there's a chorale section. There's other improvisatory things going on, elements of his etudes.
Yeah, the chorale section I always thought may have something to do with him being a very religious man. It may have been a Catholic chorale, and I believe there is such a thing.
Yeah,
as the Catholic chorale.
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah. Neither of us are Catholic, but any Catholics out there in the audience?
That's why I cannot be sure, but I believe there is such a thing, and that is a device that you sometimes observe in his music. For instance, in the barcarolle, out of nowhere, there appears a chorale, and everything comes to still, and then the music keeps going. And usually these chorales are very unusual and interesting harmonically. And in these places, you really observe Chopin and his foremost advanced harmonies.
Yeah. And his ability to create chorales in such a way, like almost in the craftsmanship that Bach would have used.
Yes, and I believe Bach was one of his favorites. And he prescribed that to all his students, of which he had many, and teaching was one of his major ways to keep himself busy.
Yeah. Well, this piece is going to keep you plenty busy.
I'm afraid so.
And so I'm so glad you chose this to end the program. And I just want to thank you for being here again, and really looking forward to this Chopin.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Yoni, for really spectacular performance. Wow. I wish that everyone who's listening right now could have been here live to hear that in person, because it's truly, truly special when you're hearing this instrument make those sounds, and Yoni, who's controlling it so masterfully. So I'd like to thank you all for being with us this evening. Please give Yoni another round of applause at home, in your living room, or wherever you are. And if you feel so inclined, please show your support by making a small donation at our PayPal. You can do that either on our website at www.claytonpianofestival.org or at the PayPal link that's, I think, in most of the descriptions. So yes, without further ado, thank you, and please join us next month for another amazing concert here live from Hopper Piano Company. And until then, I bid you a very good night. Thank you.